Hello, everyone. Soccer is the world's game, and really, it's the beautiful game. There's such a reason why people love watching it, and it's just because it's so free-flowing and moving all the time. There's so much to it that's really just, it's for everyone, for the player and it's for the game. But a big part of the modern game has come from the development of the formations in the game, which give it structure while allowing it to move openly and freely. But really, to understand how the modern game has worked, we have to explore some of the history of the game and where it's come from and evolved. Originally, soccer was a very attacking game. It started out with very odd formations, one defender, one midfielder, and up to 8 forwards going after the ball, trying to attack. And so this involved a lot of exciting things in the game. Things were very free-flowing. The game can move around a lot. There were a lot of goals scored as a result of that, and not much was put towards defending. People didn't really care much about teamwork, and the game didn't move around very much or very quickly. People were very greedy and just decided to run forward for as long as they can until they couldn't get any further and kick the ball off into space. But the game started to change a little bit about 100 years ago with the development of the 2-3-5 formation, the pyramid. What changed between this and the older game was that passing and retaining possession became a very important part of the game, and its flow, which was a very significant change from the individual showmanship that was involved early on in the game. So from there, things continued to change and evolve over the next 100 years to the modern game, where formations look drastically differently and are much more defensively minded. The modern game involves positions often with 3, 4, or 5 defenders and much fewer attackers and midfielders, allowing the game to be a bit more flowing in passing and possession, but fewer goals are scored as a result of it. A lot of common formations are the 4-3-3, the 4-2-1-3, or the 4-4-2, which allow for a lot of support and build-up play in the back while allowing the forwards to get in and make special opportunities rather than to be purely the showcase players. The formations become so important, though, in the game because going forward and backwards, they have to be in position and remain disciplined, unlike in the old game where there was only 1 or 2 defensive players who were responsible for keeping just about everything out and forcing the game back forward at any chance that they could get. A lot of the problems that were around in the older game came from a lack of defensive balance to offset such strong attacking presence on the field. And so these modern formations like the 4-3-3 with 4 defenders, 3 midfielders, and 3 attackers allow the teams a much stronger balance in which to play out from the back into the midfield and then into the forward field, rather than simply all the way from the back to the very front, leaving a lot more or a lot less open field. There's also a more shift, even though the game has become more defensive over the last 100 years, 3-back formations are becoming more regular in the modern game because they allow for a stronger attacking presence on the field while still not sacrificing quite as much as they used to. The 3-back formations are often complemented by wing players on the outside who come back and are often the most in-shape players on the field in total because they have to play from both ends of the field. But strong and dedicated defending is definitely required in these smaller formations because against 3 forwards, 3 defenders often can be beat. Even though there's a lot of grouping in the formations, there's still also room for solo players to shine out in specialized positions where they have a special role separate from many of the other players on the field. Certain things like the sweeper or the libero position is involved where a player is alone at the back behind 3 or 4 defenders and they take on the role of being the last man. They often are a very large, solid player and their responsibility is larger than almost anyone else's on the team. Because of this, their role allows them freedom in their position, but not much in their duties. They are one of of the few players that must be in many spots on the field, but can't be compromised in what they're supposed to do, because if they're beat, their position is given up and they're most easily taken advantage of, which is at the fault of the whole team. Sweepers and stoppers who play in front of the defense are often in a similar role where they are given a lot more positional freedom, but their duties are often the same, and these solo players are very defensive-minded players often, not really focusing on going forward and attacking throughout the game. But their discipline and their where they have to be as far as working around their other teammates is often more important than almost anyone else on the team. Sometimes the lone player is put at the top to be a lone striker, and this position is also, it's more common, but it's also a very specialized role because these players often have to be very strong, fast players in order to beat the defense if they're playing at the top by themselves, because they don't have the same support as they do in other formations where they may have 2 or 3 forward players. It depends on the role of them, whether they are the finisher or the target man is often dependent upon their formation. If they have a midfielder directly behind them, they often play as a target man role and play in a bit of an assisting role, holding up the ball, keeping their back to goal, and forcing play forward while they hold on to it. But the finisher role often relies upon speed and power to play through holes in the defense and get on the end of passes in order to beat them and move forward. Either way, wherever the position is, or whatever the role of the position is, they're in a very important role on the field, especially in the modern formation, even though the lone striker role seems to be something that was a bit more prevalent about 20 or 30 years ago, and this is going away. The modern game is definitely a combination of many of the old tactics from over 100 years ago and some from more recent decades, but there's been a shift lately in a lot of the formations towards a more flowing, free-moving part of the game and a more return to the attacking football of the older times. And so even though there's more of the defensive mindedness and more defense present on the field and fewer attacking players, this attacking, free-flowing style of football has allowed the game to still be the beautiful game that it once was.